Yeah, I guess we don't rate an introduction, so we'll talk about ourselves for 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Yep. So my name is Craig Bayer. I'm a legal technology consultant. I got my undergraduate degree at Loyola in history and political science, and I made a mistake by graduating a semester early and working at a law firm before I was going to go to law school, and then just decided that I didn't want to be an attorney. But they got a whole bunch of legal software while I was there, and I helped them set it up. And I've been doing that for the past 14 years now.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
My name's Tom O'Connor, obviously by process of elimination. I am an attorney, but I will immediately prove that by offering a disclaimer, which is that I am not a member of the Louisiana Bar. So even though we'll talk about a few things and maybe touch on some ethical issues here, nothing I say should be construed as legal advice, and they always want to make sure that I say that right at the onset here. My background's in complex litigation, big databases, working with folks who set stuff up, help the plaintiffs on the BP case set up their database. So that's why we talk about security. It's always been a concern of us, dealing with databases in litigation. So we're going to talk about a lot of technical issues here, things you can do to protect your data, and what some of the actual threats are, big and small. But I always like to start off by saying the real problem is not the technology, it's the people. And we often forget that technology are just tools, and it's how people use the tools that makes things work or not work, or make things safe or not safe. And so to that end, I'm going to tell a little story of something that I experienced a couple months ago. So I'm at the airport here in Lawrence, and my flight gets canceled. Well, not canceled, delayed. But it's delayed for 2 or 3 hours. So I go down, I'm walking down the concourse. There's one of those tables with the bench that has the place you can plug in your computer, your laptop, or whatever, and power, right? So I'm sitting like here at the end, and there's nobody else except there's a woman at the other end, and she's sitting with her back to the walkway, to the people walking by, with a laptop open so that, first of all, anybody walking by could see what's on her laptop. And she's on a cell phone. And again, I'm sitting there checking my email, not really paying attention, but I hear her say, second thing is she's speaking in a fairly loud voice, so that pretty much anybody walking by can completely hear everything she's saying. And she says something to the effect of, no, she's clearly looking at a document on the screen. No, I don't like that particular clause. I think if we're going to deal with the insurance company, we've got to take a harder line than that. So I'm going to change that to, she said something about coverage. It's clear that she's talking to someone about an insurance policy and a claim, that they're coming up with a letter and making a demand or a claim against an insurance policy. And she said, yeah, 2 or 3 more minutes of the conversation, it's clear that she's a lawyer talking to somebody. And I think we can assume that that person is her client. So right away we got a problem here. We got a lawyer who's sitting in an airport with a computer open showing a document that she's talking to her client about. Okay? So the Bar Association, their radar would go off right away about something like that, not protecting client confidentiality. And then she says, yeah, again, I don't really pay a whole lot of attention, like, wow, that's not too smart, but whatever. Then I hear her say about 5 minutes later, okay, well, I think that's all. I'm going to change these documents, make these changes in the document, and I'm going to email it to you. What's your email address again? Is it Sally Smith at google.com or gmail.com? smith@gmail.com. Okay, so now I know the name and email address of her client. We've established she's a lawyer. We've established she's talking to a client about a document, and I've got the client's name and email address. Okay? Right, click, she hangs up, clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack. 5 minutes go by, cell phone again, and I hear her saying, Norma, this is Jean at the airport. I'm having trouble dialing into our system. Isn't it the same as my login, the same as my email address? Again, Sally Smith at hbs.com. Oh, hbslaw.com. Okay, great. So now I've got her name and her email address and her login to her system. Okay, all in the space of about 20 minutes, and nothing that we're going to talk about now in terms of security and firewalls and encryption and all the cool technology stuff, none of that's going to matter to this person and her client's documents, because I know now how to dial into her network, and I know her name. All I need to find somehow, and we'll talk a little bit about how people do that, but all I need to figure out is what her password is. And I'm guessing at this point that her password is probably her name, given the way that she's been so casual about everything else. So it wouldn't be too hard. So my point is, and luckily, obviously I have to change the names to protect the moderately innocent here. Luckily, I know the IT director at this particular firm, and I called him up and said, you might want, and use her name, I didn't spill the beans on her, but I said, you might want to make sure that you have a little chat with your attorneys and people who are traveling about protecting their data, and just in the purest personal sense, not technology, but how they work, and whether it's an airport or a coffee shop like the one next door. There's the CC's right across the street here. Places that give you free Wi-Fi, and Craig will mention a couple problems with that in a second as well. Those are places where people can intercept data. And if you make it that easy for them to intercept the data, they're going to. So first start with the human element. So that's my prelude to the discussion.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add here is, we go to a lot of these technology seminars, and I've heard a lot of presentations on security, and they all seem to be just like fear-mongering. Like, don't use Dropbox, don't use an iPhone. And, I take the attitude, walk out there, okay, well, I'm going to still use Dropbox, and I'm still going to use an iPhone. Hopefully this presentation is just more practical. Just do these things, and they're really they're reasonable steps to help secure yours and your client's data. So the part one, we'll talk about probably, like you alluded to, the biggest threat is not malicious people, not hackers in a foreign country. It's your employees and you. It is probably the biggest threat. And it's me and it's you. It's stuff that we do sometimes that's not secure. This is just a survey here that's what most CTOs and CIOs think. They're not really worried about an inside. They're not worried about outside job. They're worried about someone inside. And so the first thing that we have to talk about is you have to have a policy. This is especially prevalent now, and it used to not be the case. Think about like 8 years ago, you'd go work for someone, and you would go into an office, and there was a computer provided for you, and there was a phone there, and then when you would leave, you would go home, and that was it. Now you have a laptop, you have a personal laptop, you've got a smartphone, but all that stuff has your work things on it.
Smartphone lets you leave yours at home.
Yeah.
Right.
But
halfway here this morning, I felt like the Matrix, right? Like I've been unplugged. Like, how do I can't connect. I can't get any information. What do I do?
So you have to have a policy, a written policy that everyone signs saying that, okay, you might be using your own personal phone, but the data, the email on there is our data. It's not your data. And if you end up leaving us, we can wipe that.
Yeah.
You have to have something there that kind of specifies that. I mean, nowadays, when I'm helping firms start up, a lot of them aren't even providing laptops to their employees. I mean, everyone has their own laptop, and that's what we're going to use. And really, because of cloud computing, that's changed where you can do that. So you have to have some sort of written policy. And honestly, just Google it, and you can steal one. There's one in that white paper that I just found that someone had. It just says out, who owns the data. All right, so have a policy, and then we need to talk about email archiving, which is the next thing. So we're just recommend right now that if you're running a business or you work in a business, unless maybe you're over 100 users, you should be using Microsoft 365 or Google Apps. One or the other, those are the best business level email systems. And you need to turn on something called email archiving, which they both have. So what happens is you turn on email archiving, and so when you have to fire someone who is maybe not living up to expectations, the first thing they do is delete all their emails, especially the stuff that shows maybe what they stole or any sort of malpractice they committed. If you have email archiving turned on, you're backing up all that email regardless if they're deleting it or not. And again, it's very, very easy to do with Microsoft 365 or Google Apps. It's a button you press that turns on the archiving. So even if someone's deleting stuff, there's still a backup copy there.
And I would say, although we run into, and I certainly do, I've got a couple of cases going on right now where we've got a person leaves a company, takes some trade secrets with them, goes to a competitor. They did this. They took something. That's one scenario. But another one is just, again, the negligence. Okay, you've got an employee, the person leaves just to go to another firm, or maybe not to go to a law firm, go someplace else. But they've used their own laptop, or they've used their own cell phone on the desk, and they take that with them. And there are documents on there that were not either archived or wiped or deleted. So what you've got is somebody who's no longer associated with a law firm walking around, perhaps with client documents on their phone. And again, maybe totally negligently on them. Maybe they're not going to do anything with them. But again, there's a question of supervision and what you've done to take reasonable steps to protect client documents. And that statement seems to be the standard that's being used by bar associations in evaluating these sorts of things, especially when it comes to cloud computing. Have you taken reasonable steps to protect client confidentiality? I will say the Louisiana Bar has not issued an opinion in that regard yet. It's something you should probably just keep an eye on, see if they ever do. But there's been about 12 or 14 states so far that have. So it's clearly a trend amongst the bar associations to start at least addressing the issue of what's reasonable in the area of cloud computing and BYOD, bringing your own device to work, and the steps you need to take to make sure that that's secure. And reasonable steps is the buzz phrase so far.
So disable accounts. This kind of fits in with having a policy. So in your policy, list all of the cloud-based computing stuff that you use. We use Westlaw and Microsoft 365 and Clio and NetDocuments. Have a list there. And when you let someone go, disable all those accounts. I think people forget that because, I did that for my company, and I had 12 different things I needed to disable if I let someone go. And I have that all on a list now, and I know, the night before to disable all that stuff so they can't get to. This is common sense, but I see it all the time where I'll go into a system and someone will want me to add a new user, and I'm like, there's 4 other users that are still active, and they can all log in and see the data, and they haven't worked here for a year. So, add that to your policy and make sure that you just disable it.
And I will say, although we didn't, we were kind of discounting at some point hackers. One of the most common means of hackers getting into systems is to find an old user who's perhaps not there anymore, and there's a list someplace of usernames and emails and passwords, and they get that list and then they use that to jump in, and those people are still active. One of the most famous stories in hackerdom, there was a book a number of years ago called The Cuckoo's Egg. It involved an astronomer in Berkeley who was working nights, and back then when they worked nights, they were renting computer time from the university and accessing one of the big telescopes. And so they would get a phone bill every month, and this guy got a phone bill that was off by 14 cents off of his records. Now, to you and I, that would be insignificant. We probably just would pay it. To an astronomer, it might as well have been $14 million. 14 cents was 14. It was the number. It wasn't the amount. It was the fact that it was off. So he took it upon himself to track it. Long story short, somebody was dialing in while he was online and then using his name to dial out, which was irritating enough. But then when he got somebody, and again, remember, this was long enough ago, like 20 years ago, before people really took hacking seriously, they found out that it was, in fact, some hackers from Eastern Europe who were dialing in, and the number they had dialed out to was the missile testing grounds at Red Sands. Okay, they were dialing into a military installation, and in fact, it turned out that as the Army rolled people through there for training, they would stay for 3, 4, 5 weeks. They'd get a login and a password, and they were never deleted as users. And somebody somehow had found the list of all of those people. So these hackers were dialing in and using the old list of names and passwords to dial in because the accounts were still active. Just a very, very simple human engineering trick to get in, but one that's tried all the time and is often successful.
Yeah.
Disable those old accounts.
Encryption. So this word gets thrown out a lot, and we'll talk about it. But the first thing to do is really let me just see here. We'll go with the first one is, all right, encrypt your laptop. So this is my MacBook Pro. There's a way, and it's in the white paper. You can just Google it, where I've gone in and I've encrypted the hard drive. So what does that mean? If someone steals this laptop, like my MacBook Air got stolen off the Southwest flight in New Orleans 3 weeks ago, what they can do is crack open the laptop, pull the hard drive out, go to Best Buy, buy a hard drive enclosure, plug it in, and just pull all the data off. Your Mac or Windows password doesn't really mean anything if it's not attached to the computer. So if you encrypt the hard drive, it's unusable, which mine was. So on a Windows 10 computer, Windows 8 computer, and any new version of a Mac, you can easily encrypt that hard drive. All it's doing is protecting the hard drive when it's away from the computer.
That's just easily means it's built into the operating system now. So there's a function that comes with the computer in new versions of Windows and the Mac OS that lets you do that just off of a menu system. So
and you won't notice any difference. You just won't be able to take that hard drive out and use it somewhere else, which you probably don't want to do.
You're not going to do it.
So you want to encrypt every laptop because they're easy to steal, as I just said. I mean, people leave them in taxis. What is it? How many laptops does Atlanta get a year? Do they find? It's in the thousands. It's a lot of laptops.
Yeah. I was actually again at the airport the other day, and you hear the thing over the speaker, and it was the person who left their HP laptop and their iPhone at security, please come back to the TSA and we have your equipment. And that message was being repeated for like 20 minutes. Somebody had walked away without their laptop and their cell phone and apparently didn't realize it and had left it sitting there. It's astonishing how many times things get left behind just at the TSA.
So now, desktop computer, if you have that capability, I would turn it on. But a desktop computer is not, it's a lot less likely that you're going to lose your desktop computer unless someone steals it. But if someone breaks into your office, they won't steal any of your desktop computers. They'll steal all the laptops, but they won't steal it. Very rare that they actually steal it. So you could turn it on there too. No performance hit or anything like that. It's just protected. All right, so encrypt your laptops. The second thing is if you're using Google Drive, Dropbox, or OneDrive, there are third-party tools that you can add into them that actually encrypt your data in there. So I use, which you kind of can't see here, is something called BoxCryptor. So I use Dropbox. Dropbox is great. I love it. It works perfectly well. I have this program called BoxCryptor that works inside Dropbox. So all the data is encrypted. I'm not really worried about a hacker getting into my Dropbox account. Although that is a concern. There's a concern if Dropbox employees can actually see your data. Let's just throw that whole argument out, which is a valid argument, but let's take this aside. What happens if I share Dropbox information with someone? They have all my documents. So when I was using Dropbox and I had all of my client documents in there, and then I would hire someone, we'd put Dropbox on their computer, and all my files would synchronize to their computer. Well, how do I get those files back? And these BoxCryptor, these encryption, Vivio and Sukasa, they basically allow you to change the encryption password, and that user can no longer log in. So that's the real reason. If you shared anything with Dropbox, how do you get that data back if you have to let that person go? These all cost like $20 to $30 a year, really, to install. BoxCryptor is the one that I'm using. So I have BoxCryptor installed on this computer. I have it installed on my Windows computer, and I have it installed on my iPhone. So when I need to go into Dropbox, I open up BoxCryptor and I view the Dropbox stuff there.
Right. I use a program called Box, not to be confused with Dropbox. There's a separate program called Box. Same thing, online sharing, web-based. They do not have that synchronization.
Well,
you can set it up so it doesn't have that synchronization.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about this. Programs like NetDocuments and Box keep all the documents on their server,
right?
So you don't have to worry about your employees having all the documents.
Right. So I like Box for that reason, and it's also relatively inexpensive. Although I still would recommend encryption just as a secondary safeguard. There have been, I believe, two bar associations that have specifically addressed that issue. I think Massachusetts and one of the Carolinas, and in both cases they recommended encryption as a reasonable step to be taken to ensure the security of the documents. The other thing I like about Box is that it's been used by a number of Fortune 500 corporations. It's been tested in a corporate environment, and so you have a little bit of cachet there, and it's now currently being tested by the U.S. Attorney's Office as a tool for sharing documents with Defense Counsel. The only reason I know that is because one of the offices is here. One of the 4 test beds is here in New Orleans, and I was on a panel with Mr. Polite, and he was talking about it, and they're very high on it as well. So I think, again, if you're ever in a situation of explaining what you use to say that you use the same product that's used by the Department of Justice is just something that could be a little helpful.
All right, so
well, this is good. I like this.
Encrypt your email. So here's the idea: an email encryption, I think it used to be a pain in the neck. It's gotten a lot better, but you're never going to encrypt every single like if I email you and say the Saints suck in an email, I don't need to encrypt that. But if I have an email with social security number, tax information, investment information, I don't want anyone able to read that. So I'm using Microsoft Outlook. The example here is Citrix share file. So I've got this little thing right here. When I want to encrypt the email, I just simply press the button. The email is then encrypted. So then the email is sent to that person, and we basically make that person authenticate themselves. So they have to maybe set up a username and password or answer a question like, what city do I live in or something like that. And if they can do that, then they can read the email. But if they can't do that, they cannot read it. And
so you send the other person whatever they need to authenticate themselves.
Yeah, and I actually can send them an email, and I'll do this for my line of work. I need to know your Windows password, but so I'll send them the encrypted message. I'm saying hit reply back to this email because that will also the reply back will be encrypted. Citrix share file does a great job with this, as well as Protect Trust is another company. Protect Trust, I think, is like $2 a user a month for that, and I have it on 3 computers, and I have it on my iPhone as well. Citrix share file is probably, if you really don't want to worry about adding Box Crypto to Dropbox, share file might be the way to go. Share file is really, really secure, and is maybe one of the best out of those synchronization programs.
This is a growing trend in the bar associations as well. Just like with cell phone transmissions, there have been about half a dozen bar associations that have said email cannot be considered a confidential communication unless it has been encrypted. Again, not the Louisiana bar, but it's certainly a trend that bar associations are moving towards. That if you have a confidential communication or you're sending a confidential document, you really should consider encrypting it.
And again, it's really easy. Again, you just click a button in your email and it's then encrypted.
I would not be surprised to see certainly Microsoft include this in Exchange in the next couple of years or so. They're trying to incorporate a lot of these things into the operation.
They definitely will.
Yeah.
All right. Going back to employees that you have to let go, if you do own their computer, and it's time to have someone new come in, you can make an image of that computer, which is a picture of the hard drive before they leave, and put it on a USB hard drive somewhere in your office. The reason you're doing this, in case anything ever comes up, and we're talking about 4 years from now or something like that, you have that image that you can go back to. If you don't have an image of that data, it's hard to really see what that person had done. And I know that you experienced this in litigation matters that happen, kind of years afterwards. And then it's really expensive to get that data back.
Yeah, and then you have to try to find the computer if you need something, and if it's someplace else, try to get it. You have to pay a forensics person to do something with it. It's very typical that something will come up down the road, and all of a sudden there was some documents on a computer. This could also really come up a lot with a client. I advise all corporate clients to image the computer when a person leaves. You don't know what's going to come up in some sort of litigation down the road where they say we need those emails, and it's gone past wherever the archiving system is or the backup tape system, and they're gone. So if you have these image hard drives, I had a case involving a software company up in Oxford, Mississippi, and they just routinely did that. Somebody left, they imaged the hard drive, put them on a shelf in the back room, and if something happened 3 or 4 years down the road, they kept them there, and they still had access to them. The funniest story, this is all public record because there was a week-long sanctions hearing about this and a number of other issues, but I was involved with a case with Harris Casino a number of years ago, and it was their casino up in Tunica, Mississippi, and a computer went missing, and the judge was not convinced that it was really missing because it was actually belonged to a paralegal who worked for the legal department for Harris in Las Vegas, who worked on the case in question. The judge was he was ripped. Like, how could you not have saved that information? It's a paralegal, and she was working on this case. I mean, that clearly falls under your obligation to preserve. To make a long story short, by then Harris had been bought by Caesars. The computer was gone. A gentleman named Craig Ball, who was an attorney over in Austin, had been named by the judge to handle, to be the discovery master, special master on the case to handle these issues. He tasked me with finding it, and we eventually did. We found the computer in a golf course caddy shack owned by Caesars in Macau, right? All the way around the world. And it had been wiped twice, so it wasn't inadvertent. They deliberately wiped the machine and then shipped it all the way around the world. And Mr. Ball, in addition to being extremely upset, as was the judge and the company, because luckily all those things had happened before I was brought on board. I was also part of the team that was brought in to help fix things. I like to always point out, and all of this is public record, like I said, it's all in the sanction order. Mr. Ball made a statement on the record and the judge was kind of laughing when it happened, said, "I don't get it. This is Las Vegas. You guys kill people and bury them in the desert. Why didn't you just do that to the computer? Why don't you take a flamethrower and burn it up, take it out in the desert, dig a hole? Why did you send it someplace?" Like it defied logic. If you're going to commit spoliation, don't leave the evidence hanging around. But the point is, if the company had just had a policy of imaging all these hard drives, we would have been quickly and easily able to go to that image and get the data that we wanted.
Yeah, that probably cost them $10,000 or more to recover the data from that computer.
It cost us a lot more than that eventually. We ended up paying all the plaintiff's attorney's fees.
But I mean, again,
yes.
what we're talking about here is you hook a hard drive up to a computer, you press about 4 buttons, and you go home, and the next day you got an image of that computer. Yeah. Built into Mac and Windows software now. So there's really, it's not, you used to have to buy Norton Ghost and all these software products. You can just do it now.
Yep.
Very, very easy. Wi-Fi networks, I mean, obviously this is...
Anybody use Wi-Fi in your office? Anybody have a Wi-Fi network at their office?
Everyone does. I mean, who doesn't have a Wi-Fi network at their office? This is, I mean, I feel like it's kind of stupid that we even have to talk about this anymore. But if we were just to like take a little field trip and walk around, you know, how many law firms can we just connect to their Wi-Fi and get all their information off of? It would be a lot. The thing is that you want to have a password on there. That's obvious. You want to have a router that has basically 2 networks, your regular one and your guest network. The idea being the guest network can't browse files on the computer, strictly internet access only, and set that up. And I mean, I got involved in a case once where an attorney had gotten a sanctions against him for writing really horrible emails to a judge. And they had traced it back, and it was like, look, this is coming from your IP address at your office. And what they found out was it was a paralegal who had gotten fired, drove up to the office at night, connected to the Wi-Fi network, and sent all
From the parking lot.
Yes, from the parking lot.
Outside.
And sent all these emails using a fake Gmail account that he had created. So, I mean, put a password on there, and then change the password. Going back to that slide earlier ago, you let someone go, change the password. You know, don't have to make it super complex because that's sometimes annoying. I mean, my dad has like a 30-character one he changes like every month. So when I go visit my parents, it's very annoying. But just have a password and change it. Have a modern router that has a guest and a regular network.
Right.
Use a DMS, and we really should put, what do you use again? Box on here as well. So,
document management system.
Yeah. So the reason we say use a DMS, again, Dropbox, great program. I use it for things all the time. The problem with Dropbox, again, is that you're sharing every single file with the person. So the way that World Docs, NetDocuments, and Box, which should be up here as well, work.
And these are both web-based tools.
They're all web-based, and well, World Docs is both, so it's on-premise and web-based. NetDocs is totally web-based. Box is totally web-based. All of your documents reside on their servers. When you want to use a document, you bring it down, work on it, and then when you're done, it automatically goes back up. So one thing that we've done, like when I install NetDocs, and you can do this in Box, and you probably can do this in World Docs too, is I have a download warning. So when someone tries to download more than 100 documents, meaning that, I'm thinking of that case that I've been involved in before where you walk into a law firm and someone's quit and they just took all the documents with them. When someone tries to download more than 100 documents, it sends an email out to a select group of people just letting them know, hey, Tim is downloading 1,000 documents. Should you be doing that? And, you can shut that off. So that's, I think, one of the big reasons for using it. The other one is, and we'll talk about this, is you can't really get stuff like the CryptoLocker virus, which we'll cover in a little bit, when you're using one of these programs. Pricing-wise, Box is going to be the cheapest. There's a free account. There's a 3-user minimum account, which is, I think, $15 a month, so $45 for 3 users. NetDocuments is $40 a user a month, but that is a legal specific document management. So there's a lot of other stuff like searching and profiling that's really good. And then I can't remember the World Docs. World Docs is in the range of the NetDocs price as well. But you might want to look at using those. If you don't want to use those, maybe I go with Citrix Share File. If you're going to use Dropbox, put a little encryption on there. All right, so that was how to protect yourself from you and your employees. This one will be part 2 is really viruses and spam. And this is kind of a good transition. Did anyone here get CryptoLocker?
No. Good.
Okay.
You know what it is? People heard of it?
So, yeah. I mean, what would happen? We talked about encryption before being really good. Usually when we do this session, someone has gotten it.
Yeah.
So we were in Oxford, Mississippi 2 weeks ago. Someone had gotten it. So you show up to work, you try to open up a document, and it won't let you open it up because it's been encrypted. And then this thing shoots up on your computer, and it says, your files have been encrypted. You have 3 days to pay us $300 in Bitcoin, or we'll just kill the encryption key and you'll never get to any of your documents again. I know so many attorneys got this. So many local attorneys here in New Orleans, around the place. So you now have a dilemma. Honestly, if it happened to me and I had no backups, I'd just pay the $300 because they would unencrypt it. A lot of people are like, well, I'm not negotiating with terrorists. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to lose all your documents? If you had a backup, you could restore from the backup.
So let's stop for a second. How did they get the virus?
How did they get the virus? I think they were doing, for most of the people that got BitLocker, were opening up an email and running a program. Like, you need to look at these documents because they're important. And then when you open it up, it would run an executable program on the computer.
Right.
And that's how you would get them.
Right. And a lot of these companies are very good about getting or using emails that you would trust. Just one sec. One of the first stages of this is somehow getting into people's exchange systems or getting into a mailbox and getting a list of real names and email addresses and then using one to send you something. I got one the other day from the director of the FBI. I was astonished that the director of the FBI knew me by my first name. A real quick and easy way is to right-click on the name of the sender and see that it conforms to what they're saying. A lot of the bank ones, it'll say, admin@wellsfargo.com, and when you click on it, it's joeinbosnia.com or something like this. Here, yeah. So you can, if you have any suspicion, click on the name and see what really comes up. not just the name that displays on the screen. But yeah, question, sir.
No, and not so much a question as a statement. There is also something similar to this, I forgot the name of it, where if you try to do something to correct that, it now doubles the amount or triples the amount and or just totally wipes your,
We'll wipe you out, yeah.
your whole
Yeah,
computer.
some of these programs are very sophisticated. I mean, people put some real thought into this.
Well, so yeah, I mean, they actually, for the crypto, that was one of the things. Any attempt to remove or damage this software will lead to immediate destruction of the private key. That was the encryption key that was protect your data. There's a new one out there that's, I think in the past 3 weeks, there's a new version. So they killed this one. But then someone built another one that's running around now, doing the exact same thing. So this isn't, fear mongering. This is really realistic that you could get this. You have to have a backup. If you don't have a backup, I mean, again, what happens is you get it on a personal computer. It starts encrypting all the files on there. Then it jumps to the network drive, like the S drive, and then it
It's your whole firm, yeah.
yeah, it starts to encrypt all that stuff. If you see it early enough, people will just like shut off the computer. That can stop it, and then try to find, okay, the clients A through L were encrypted. So let's see if we can pull that from a backup tape.
So I guess the bottom line is if you see an email that's got an attachment and the message is something along the lines of, look at this or review this, if you have any question about the accuracy of that, the first rule of thumb is don't open the file. Okay? Verify who the sender is. And like I said, sometimes it can be from a name that you would in fact automatically trust. And I've just gotten so wary of these sorts of things. It'll be like, well, why would my sister be sending me an insurance document to look at? That doesn't make any sense. If it was an analysis of who's injured in this week's Notre Dame game, my sister would send that to me. But so you got to just, again, the first trigger for me is there an attachment to the email from somebody I usually don't get attachments from, and what is it they're asking me to do here? And then then you can investigate further.
Just jumping back a couple slides, again, if you had box.net or net documents, you're not going to get the CryptoLocker virus because your documents aren't on a Windows server that files can be installed on. So that's just one thing to add. Again, a lot of attorneys as well as other businesses got it. Yes.
So is this warning only for PC people?
So crypto, we'll talk about Mac in a second. CryptoLocker, I think, was just Windows. There are Mac viruses out there. There's just not as many because Windows still has the majority share of the market. So yes, I think, but I would be, I don't know, the new one, I don't think the new one hits Mac either. There's a new one out there. But yeah, definitely for Windows.
What if you have like an MSN or Outlook email address and you're using it on your Mac? Are you then as vulnerable as a PC person?
No,
okay,
not at all.
Cool, thank you.
All right, no email address on the website. Just jumping back to what you talked about before, there are what they call bots out there that go through websites, pull all the email addresses, and email your CryptoLocker virus to you. So you don't want to have your email address out there. Have a contact form. I know that's annoying, but don't have an email address out there because that's the easiest way to get sent a virus. Antivirus software. So on my Mac, I do use an antivirus software, although I know my Mac is less likely to get a virus. It's market share, 10%. I know Mac is going up. So even if it was 15% now, you still have the majority of the world runs on Windows. So that's why the people who write viruses.
Well, the majority of the world here in the United States. Apple market share in Japan is 50%. Apple has...
But worldwide,
Apple market share is about 35%.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, but it still goes to the same point that when someone's going to spend the time and money to write a virus, they'll write it for Windows first. So Windows computer, I use the Windows own free Security Essentials, which is what I use there. On my Mac, I put malware, Malbytes, although I know I'm less that's free too. That's the antivirus I use on my Mac. And actually, to be honest, I've put malware on my Windows computer because
just to be safe.
Yeah.
Microsoft, that program though, you have to download. It's not included in the operating system. You have to go to the Microsoft website, Microsoft Security Essentials.
Yeah.
You just go to the Microsoft website and type that in search. It'll bring up a screen to download it. Malware, same thing.
Yeah, just Google it. You can get it. And they have like a free copy. Yeah. We talked about how to spot a spoof email. Senderscore.org. It's a website. You're worried about an email address, type it in there, and it'll tell you if they think it's a virus or not. This is just sometimes I use this when I'm not sure about someone sending something. Yep. Senderscore.org. HaveIBeenPwned.com. Catherine Reach told me about this. Go to this website and type in your email address. And it'll tell you what hack that email address has been on. Whether it was Ashley Madison or Adobe is the only one I was hacked on. So this Adobe in Home Depot, October 2013. I've typed in an email address and I was hacked, and this actually had passwords as well. So someone stole my email address and my password from Adobe's website in October 2013. At least I know now that that happened, and I can think about changing my passwords depending on what I was using. Whoever stole that email address, they sold that to a whole bunch of people. And those people go to every website conceivable and try that email address and password and see if it'll work. So HaveIBeenPwned.com, P-W-N-E-D. Keep your computers patched. Again, pretty obvious, but I don't see it all the time. Windows, that's why you can't really run Windows XP anymore. There's no security patches for it anymore. So you got to be using Vista, which you shouldn't be, or 7, 8, or 10. And the same thing with Mac OS. A lot of these patches are security flaws that they found, and they're kind of making it better. So just make sure that you're keeping your computers patched. Macs, we've already talked about this. Less likely, but it still could happen. There still are some viruses. All right, this is maybe the most important thing, and I'm not going to say that I could never get a virus, but it's less likely. So when I go on to this computer or my Windows computer, I don't have an administrative account. I'm basically a standard user. So when I go to install software, it comes up with a prompt saying, enter the admin password. And then I have to enter in that password before a piece of software will install. And that takes about, I don't know, that happens 1 or 2 times a day. It takes about 5 seconds to do. But no program can get installed unless I type in that password. So it's hard for viruses to get installed on my computer because, I would be aware that something came up while I was working.
Trying to load.
Yeah. And so again, all you have to do is create another account on your computer called admin, put a complex password on there, and then your account that you use all the time should be a user account. And the same thing on your Mac or your Windows computer. And again, this is, not to be too cocky because you still have to be careful, but this will really prevent a lot of viruses.
It's a little bit irritating as you get that prompt a couple of times a day, but it's an almost surefire way to avoid getting viruses installed on your
Well, it's, what, it used to be you had to log out, log in as that user and install. You don't even have to do that anymore. So you just have to type in the password. So don't use an admin account for your primary use, just a regular account. All right, so these were viruses. Hackers, and I think the way we use this term, these are people that are actually going after you. So the viruses is they're out there and they're just going after everyone. Hackers are specific people that are going after Craig at BayerLawFirm.com to try to get their data. This example here is kind of a unique story, but this guy owned the Twitter account N, just the letter N, okay? And it was really popular. People wanted it, and someone offered him $50,000. He was one of the first early users of Twitter, so he had it. Some guy stole it from him, and how he stole it is he asked the guy, he's like, "How did you steal this account from me?" And he's like, "Well, I called up PayPal, and I got them to give me the last 4 digits of the credit card used on the account. And then I called up Godaddy, and I told them I lost the account, but I had the credit card, but I still had the 4 digits. And then Godaddy gave me basically access to your domain name. And so then I was able to take over your email account. I went to Twitter, said, okay, reset password. They sent it to me, and then I was able to steal the account. So social engineering, which is really, really common. And GoDaddy is the prime example because people social engineer it all the time.
Yeah, my wife did it about 3 weeks ago now. I was changing my website from GoDaddy to WordPress. And I was out of town, and my wife does all the website stuff anyways because she's really good at that. And she's a marketing person, so she does it for lots of different businesses and law firms, and does mine as well. Anyways, she went on to try to change the, you know what it was,
The MX records.
Yeah, right. Something she had to do.
Email.
Yeah.
The MX records.
Yeah. So she needed the accounting information at GoDaddy, and she was able to call them and convince them to give her the information. It was unbelievable. I mean, she called me about a half an hour later, and she said, "Oh yeah, I got that taken care of." I said, "Well, how did you do that? I didn't send you you said you needed the login and the password to get to the domain." And she said, "No, GoDaddy gave it to me. I just, talked to them for 10 minutes, was able to convince them to do it." It's amazing.
Yeah.
But how much social engineering can get out of people.
Right. So how do you prevent that social engineering from happening? First example, two-factor authentication. So when I go, and GoDaddy actually does have this. So if someone went and hacked my GoDaddy account, they were able to reset the password. They would also have to have my cell phone, and when I go to log in, a text message goes to that cell phone, and I have to type in a unique code.
They send you another.
Yeah. So anything that has two-factor authentication should be turned on. Office 365, you can turn on two-factor authentication. So that, now on my own computer, it doesn't happen because I said trust this computer, but if someone in Slovakia is trying to log into my 365 account, they have to have my password and my cell phone, and they have to be able to type this in.
I don't know if it's happened with folks, but very
Banks.
common with banks. Yeah.
Chase.
I'll
is
be on
awesome
the road.
about it.
Yeah, Chase, because we both use Chase and have had this experience. I'm on the road, I got a new iPad or whatever, and I try to do something on my banking. It says, "We don't recognize this computer. What's your cell phone number? We're going to send you another code." So again, if the person, if I had stolen it and was trying to get in and didn't have the cell phone to do that, I'd be out of luck.
And just think about it. If someone was able to hack your email address, that's the first thing they do is go look through your emails. Oh, this person uses Chase Bank. Let's go to Chase Bank. Reset password. Let's go to everything they use. Reset all the passwords so that we have them. Two-factor. So again, the reason we recommend Microsoft 365 or Google Apps. And just to be clear, Gmail is not Google Apps. Google Apps costs about $5 an email address a month. And that's the paid version of Gmail. They both have two-factor authentication, so you can just turn that on. Again, it's when someone's on a different computer, you have to have that phone number to be able to log in. GoDaddy has it too, so if you're using GoDaddy, turn on the two-factor authentication. So I have to type in a password, and I have to have that phone. And if I don't, I won't be able to get in. Although, I sometimes worry that somehow GoDaddy will let you in anyway, but it has it. Anything that you can turn that on, turn it on for. And then, like I said, Gmail, you have two-factor authentication. I have my web, I have everything that is important to me, investment accounts, bank accounts, all through a Gmail address with two-factor authentication that I don't use. So it's not like CraigBayer@gmail.com. It's more of a made-up, I'm not going to tell you, but and that way, I really feel that it would be hard for someone to get through that. They'd have to guess the email address that's not used anywhere, guess the password, and have my cell phone. And could it be done? Sure. I mean, I'm sure there's someone out here that knows how to do it, but you're no longer the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So turn on the two-factor authentication or any option that you have, 365, Gmail, and your domain provider. Use a password manager. I use RoboForm, which is, let's just see if it comes up right here. So to get into any of my passwords, I have to type in a master password, all right? I have RoboForm installed here, so I don't know my password to anything. I have no clue what any of my passwords are, and they're all like 16 number characters with, alpha, numeric, all that stuff. I have one master password. Once I type that in, this program, RoboForm, fills out the passwords. It is on my iPhone, and it's on my Windows and Mac computer, and they all synchronize together. The question we always get is, what happens if someone hacks your master password? Well, then they have access to all this stuff. I also have, I use the biometric sensor on my iPhone to open up this to see. I mean, what's the other solution then? To have the same password for everything? Well, if you do that, then someone breaks one account, they have access to all your accounts. if someone broke one account here, it wouldn't matter to me because all my passwords are different. And they're not like my cat's name or anything like that. So really look at using something like this. LastPass, OnePass, RoboForm. Anyone using one of these right now? What are you using? Okay, works fine. You have one password, and then it generates passwords for you. Work on every device, Windows, Mac, Android. They just work, and it keeps all your passwords synchronized too, which is nice. They all use the biometric sensors now on devices to get in there. RoboForm cost me $30 a year to use, and I have it on like 6 different devices. And RoboForm would also allow me to reset all my passwords really quickly if I needed to as well. Privacy Badger, this is just something that I have in Chrome. It only works in Google Chrome. It's interesting. 60 Minutes had this thing on the whole data. We were listening to that book on data brokers and how they basically track everything you do online and build these profiles against you through cookies and various things. Privacy Badger, I have it in my Chrome, and it's supposed to does a couple of things. It lets me know when people are tracking me, and it's supposed to prevent tracking. It's free. So if you use Chrome on a Windows or Mac computer, think about installing Privacy Badger. VPN for your computer. So we're getting to the end here. So I use Private Tunnel here on this computer.
Explain what that means, VPN.
VPN? I'm going to explain.
All right.
And so let me just say this. I go into Starbucks, and I connect to the Starbucks Wi-Fi all the time. And then I immediately turn on my VPN, which is a private tunnel it's encrypting all the data I'm using, so that no one that is in Starbucks could browse to my computer and see it. So VPN traditionally was, I work at a law firm, and when I want to go home to get access to that firm's network, I have to go into the VPN. This is just a VPN to access the internet that's encrypting all my data. So when I go to the airport or to a coffee shop, I use their Wi-Fi, but I turn on the VPN first, and I just feel a lot more secure.
How much?
I think I paid something like $10 for, I think it's something like 10 gigs of data for Private Tunnel here. And I have it on my iPhone. I never really use it on my iPhone, but I could. But I use it on this computer all the time.
Right.
So think about getting a VPN if you're working in coffee shops a lot. This is what I would look at getting, or the airport. That's it. So any questions? Yes.
How long does it take for the crypto virus to encrypt documents on a computer? Let's say, I don't know.
I don't know the exact time, but I think it could do it in a day or two. I mean, what it would do first is hit all the documents on your computer, and then it would go and move to a network drive.
Right. So would your computer be sluggish while it's encrypting documents, or would it be more?
Yeah, it could cause a performance issue, and especially because it's encrypting stuff. Most people I know that have gotten it have figured it out. Like, and call their IT guy, and he's like, unplug everything right now, and let me come back in when you're not hooked to the network and try to see what's damaged and what is not damaged. Like, they boot into safe mode so it won't run,
Right.
and they'll see. But it wouldn't take a month. It would take days.
Oh, yeah, like a day, 2.
Yeah.
Tops.
And you would realize it when you try to open up a document, you would no longer be able to open it up. And then that thing at some point would just flash up on your computer. And there is a new one that's they killed the first one. There's a new one coming out right now that's going around.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Emails, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot us a message. We'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Private Tunnel, is that for Mac? You use that for your Mac?
Yep. And on my Windows computer.
Yes?
I have it on both.
Okay.